Hey there and welcome. I'm happy that you've joined me for the second episode of the Origins of Azeroth podcast. This episode will be about Fall of the Black Empire, the Well of Eternity, World Forges, and the end. We delve into the ordering of Azeroth. I trust that this episode will captivate you just as the previous ones. The triumphs over the Akir and the Elementals infused the Keepers with renewed determination. They understood that their most daunting challenges still awaited. As a united force, their gaze shifted resolutely toward the heart of the Black Empire, the vast temple city encircling the old god, Ishar. The Keepers believed that toppling this formidable Enraki stronghold would deal a decisive blow to their adversaries. Facing swarms of relentless Enraki, the Keepers and their allies relentlessly advanced towards the towering presence of Ishar. The battlefield bore witness to the fallen bodies of both Titan-forged and Enraki as the invaders breached the city's defenses, confronting the old god itself. Ishar was more powerful than the Keepers had expected. It poisoned the minds of the Titan-forged, drawing out their fears and darkening their thoughts. Concern grew among the Pantheon that their servants might succumb to the old god's overwhelming might. In a bold move, the Pantheon decided to take direct action, despite the potential consequences for Azeroth. Amanthal, the mighty leader of the Pantheon, reached down from the stormy skies, grasping the writhing form of Ishar. With a tremendous effort, he tore the old god from the world's crust, resulting in a cataclysmic event. Ishar's colossal body was torn asunder, its demise unleashing a shockwave that shattered mountains and obliterated countless Titan-forged. Ishar was dead, but its tendrils had bored more deeply through Azeroth than Amanthal had ever imagined. In excising the old god from the world, he had inadvertently ripped an eternal wound in Azeroth's surface. Volatile arcane energies, the lifeblood of the nascent Titan, erupted from the scar and roiled out across the world. The Pantheon knew that the only course of action was to imprison the old gods where they lay and contain their evil forever. It would be a difficult task, but it would be possible with the aid of the Keepers. At the Pantheon's behest, the Titan-forged devised a plan to shatter the last vestiges of the Black Empire forever. They would battle each of the old gods directly. Once they had weakened the creatures, Arcadas would create subterranean chambers to contain them. Mimiron would then fashion colossal machineries to lock the old gods in place. When this work was done, Loken would imbue each prison with a great enchantment that would neutralize the old god's evil. Putting their strategy into action, the Titan-forged embarked on a campaign, engaging in fierce battles as they marched southeast to confront the enigmatic N'Zoth. After overwhelming the old god, the Keepers used their powers to encase the creature in an underground prison. Next, the Titan-forged marched southwest to the sprawling temple city that had grown around the old god Khatun. The Keepers and their allies purged swarms of Enraki before assaulting the old god itself and subduing it. Much as they had done with N'Zoth, the Keepers entombed the entity beneath the earth and constructed a prison of their own, devising over its form. Only one old god remained, the vicious and cunning Yogg-Saron. As the Titan-forged closed in on Yogg-Saron's crumbling northern stronghold, the old god unleashed the greatest of its generals, the Kothraxi. The Kothraxi were monstrous warbringers, larger and more resilient than other Enraki. They possessed great strength and brutal intellect, and their dark powers and maledictions could drive even the Titan-forged to madness. The giant tentacle-faced Kothraxi whipped the remnants of the Black Empire into a frenzy. They swarmed the Titan-forged on all sides, thinning their ranks. By the time the Keepers and their allies reached Yogg-Saron, their forces were greatly diminished. They found that they lacked the strength of numbers to defeat the old god. Yogg-Saron would have destroyed the Titan Forged completely, if not for the heroic efforts of Odin. Despite the toll of battle, Odin summoned his remaining strength, rallying the Titan Forged for a counteroffensive. He instructed Loken to craft an illusion spell that confused the Kothraxi, making them see themselves and Yogg-Saron as adversaries. Amid the chaos, Odin seized the opportunity to strike down his disoriented foes. Inspired by his example, the Titan Forged united and managed to subdue Yogg-Saron. Following their established pattern, the Keepers sealed the entity beneath the earth, within an enchanted prison of immense proportions. For the first time in Azeroth's history, a tentative peace settled over the world. The Titan Forged had banished the chaotic elemental lords to another plane of existence. They had also purged the Black Empire, and muted the terrible power of the old gods. Azeroth had been saved, but there was much work to be done. The Keepers were troubled by the immense scar left when a mantle had torn Ashar from the world's surface. A relentless surge of volatile arcane energy gushed from the massive rift, sending out destructive waves across the land. The Keepers knew that if left unchecked, this unbridled energy would slowly devour Azeroth. Diligently the Keepers toiled, crafting enchantments to seal the gaping wound and contain the escaping energy. Gradually the chaotic energies abated, finding equilibrium. What remained of the scar transformed into a vast reservoir of shimmering energy, to be called the Well of Eternity. Thereafter, the power of this wondrous fount would be infused in the ailing world, helping life to take root and bloom across the globe. With the wound mended, the Keepers turned their focus to fortifying Azeroth's burgeoning world soul and stabilizing its life essence. Collaboratively, Arcadus and Mimiron harnessed their abilities to forge the Forge of Wills and the Forge of Origination. These remarkable devices harmonized, infusing Azeroth's dormant spirit with cosmic energies. The Forge of Wills found its place in the northern expanse, cultivating the world soul's nascent consciousness. The Forge of Origination was embedded in the southern reaches, harmonizing with the Earth's rhythms and bolstering the world soul's presence. With the creation of these machines, the Keepers embarked on their mission. Odin oversaw the installation of the Forge of Wills within the grandeur of the Storm Peaks, a northern mountain range. Recognizing Odin's valor in the war against the old gods, the Pantheon honored him as the prime designate. He would oversee Yogg-Saron's prison and tend to the Forge of Wills. Odin and the other Keepers immediately began building the great fortress of Ulduar, to serve as the main bastion of the Titan Forged on Azeroth. The fortress would house not only Yogg-Saron's prison, but also the Forge of Wills, and other machineries of the Keepers' devising. The Forge of Wills could shape and grant consciousness to living stone and metal, producing not only giants, but diverse forms of Titan Forged. This new generation of beings would aid the Keepers in bringing harmony to the world. As the Forge of Wills produced these new Titan Forged, High Keeper Ra led an expedition to establish the Forge of Origination in the south. Accompanied by the Anubisath giants, Leonine Tol'vir, and indomitable Mogu, recently crafted from the Forge of Wills, Ra's journey revealed remnants of Ashar's corporeal forms scattered across the southern lands. These fallen pieces infused the terrain with malevolence. Among them, Ashar's heart, a mass of diseased flesh, pulsating with void energies, remained intact. Rather than destroy the heart, Ra created an underground vault to imprison and neutralize its evil. Recognizing the potential for understanding the nature of old gods and the void, Ra tasked his Mogu followers with guarding the vault of Ashar and the surrounding land. Continuing westward, Ra and his followers embedded the Forge of Origination in the earth. The immense machine stirred to life, radiating healing energies into the world's core. Ra and his followers erected a sprawling fortress around the Forge of Origination. This site was called Uldum, and it would become the southernmost base of operations for the Keepers. Much like the Forge of Wills, the Forge of Origination would serve a dual purpose. In the event that Azeroth's flora and fauna succumbed to corruption, the incredible energies stored inside the Great Machine could be unleashed to eradicate all life on the world, allowing it to start anew. High Keeper Ra commanded some of the Tol'vir and Anubisaths to safeguard Uldum forever. He and the rest of his servants marched northwest into a land later known as Silithus. This arid and inhospitable region was home to the subterranean prison that housed the old god Khatun. Ra and his allies labored to expand on the prison, ultimately constructing the mighty fortress of Ankaraji. After the task was done, the High Keeper ordered his remaining Titan forged to safeguard the stronghold. Ra himself, seeing his work completed, would spend the following ages roaming the southern regions of Azeroth, distantly observing his Titan forged and ensuring that they upheld their sacred charges. With the twin forges embedded in Azeroth, the Keepers moved to reshape the surface of the world. To this end, they called on the new generation of servants wrought from the Forge of Wills. Each of these loyal and mighty Titan forged would play a different role in ordering and protecting the world. The craggy and kind-hearted Earthen would specialize in crafting mountains and carving out the deep places of the world. The clockwork mechagnomes, designed by Keeper Mimiron, would help build and maintain the Keeper's extraordinary machineries. The stone-skin Mogu would dig out the myriad rivers and waterways of Azeroth. The task of safeguarding many of the Keeper's holdings would fall to two different groups of constructs, the iron-skinned Frykul and the chiseled Tol'vir. To shape the environment, the Keepers also conscripted the powerful stone and sea giants. They would roam the breadth of Azeroth, lifting towering mountain ranges and dredging out the fathomless seas. While the Titan forged shaped the land, Keeper Freya ventured forth to breathe life into the world. Her efforts led to the creation of the Emerald Dream, an ever-shifting dimension of spirits and nature's magic. This ethereal realm mirrored Azeroth, guiding the evolution of its flora and fauna. Within the dream, spirits and otherworldly entities frolicked in a surreal paradise. Time and space held no sway in this mystical realm, where a single day in the physical world could span decades. Freya then wandered the world, searching for areas where the well of eternity's energies had coalesced. These regions created optimal conditions for the development of new flora and fauna. Freya shaped immense enclaves of nature at these places of power. She molded life of astounding diversity, seeding it around the world. The sites where Freya had done her work were located at the polar extremes of the world. They included regions that would later become known as Ungoro Crater, Sholazar Basin, and the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. The greatest creatures to emerge from these enclaves were colossal animals known as the Wild Gods. Freya adored and cared for these majestic beings as if they were her very own children. She often wandered the physical world with the Wild Gods at her side, vibrant forests and grasslands blooming in her footsteps. There was one place she and the Wild Gods frequented more than any other. A massive forested peak called Mount Hyjal. The Wild Gods stand as majestic and revered beings, each embodying a unique facet of the natural world. Among them is Malorn, a noble white stag whose presence radiates grace and majesty. His form represents the untamed expanses of the wild, a living symbol of nature's boundless strength and breathtaking beauty. Asina, often hailed as the mother wisp, embodies the very essence of life's natural cycle and unending growth. Revered for her nurturing and protective nature, she watches over the verdant forests and all their inhabitants, ensuring their well-being in the intricate dance of existence. Agamagan, the formidable razor boar, embodies the primal and indomitable forces of nature. Fierce and resilient, he encapsulates the instinctual drive to endure and flourish within the untamed realm of the wild. Aviana ascends the skies with the title of the Mistress of Birds, her essence a celebration of freedom and flight. In her presence, the heavens come alive with the graceful wings of avian creatures, and she serves as both guide and guardian to those who take to the skies. The colossal bear lords, Ursak and Ursul, command respect and awe with their imposing stature. These mighty protectors symbolize strength and unwavering endurance, embodying the very essence of the guardianship found within the heart of the wild. Portala, revered for his wisdom and sagacity, stands as a beacon of guidance. Known as the Wise, he imparts his profound insights to seekers, offering a wellspring of knowledge to those who seek his counsel. Goldrin, the embodiment of the Great Wolf, roams the untamed domains with ferocity and primal instincts. His presence awakens courage and unyielding determination within those who draw inspiration from the wild and raw aspects of nature. Chi-Ji, as the red crane, graces the world with a symbol of serene grace. Like a flowing stream, she represents inner balance and tranquility, often invoked in moments of meditation and contemplation. The Black Ox Niuzao stands as a testament to unbreakable strength and endurance. Resilience personified, he is a symbol of unwavering determination and fortitude, an unmovable force within the natural world. The White Tiger Xuan embodies agility and precision, a master of combat and disciplined action. His presence inspires martial prowess and strategic thinking, guiding those who seek excellence in their endeavors. The Jade Serpent Tolan, guiding seekers on the path of enlightenment, weaves a tapestry of wisdom and longevity. A guardian of spiritual growth, she nurtures the souls of those who journey toward understanding, lighting their way through the intricate maze of existence. Upon Hyjal's slopes, Freya intertwined the spirits of her cherished wild gods with the Emerald Dream. Bound to the ethereal realm, they embodied Azeroth's health and vitality, rendering Hyjal a lasting sanctuary to these divine beings. As Freya's creations explored the world, they came across a number of other strange life forms. These creatures had emerged from Azeroth's elemental past of their own free will. When the Keepers had sealed off the elemental plane, some stragglers had escaped banishment. The fury of these spirits had ebbed over time, and they had become creatures of flesh and blood. It was from these former elementals that some forms of wildlife, such as proto-dragons. In time, the Keepers and their servants stabilized Azeroth's main landmass, a continent that teemed with plants and creatures of every kind. Twilight fell as the Titan-Forged surveyed the world they had shaped, and they named the primary continent Kalimdor, Land of Eternal Starlight. Thank you for listening to this episode until now. I genuinely appreciate your time and interest. Your feedback in the form of comments, likes, dislikes, and shares is invaluable as it helps me create better and more exciting content for every member of this channel. As we continue our journey through the wonders of Azeroth together, I hope you'll join me for the next episode. To stay up to date and not miss out, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the notification bell. Until then, take care, and may your adventures be filled with excitement and curiosity.